All right, hi everybody. We're just going to give it a minute or two for folks to get into the Zoom room. We will we'll be back and get things started in just a moment.
No, you're not going to do this to me. You just froze up.
Oh.
Oh no, you were just still. Okay.
All right, I will get us started. I think that people are starting to get into the Zoom chat, which is great. Hi, everybody. Thank you today. Again, my name is Marcus, Executive Director of our Win the Era PAC. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. We've had a couple of these calls now. We're really excited about the first slate of candidates that we were able to go live with last week. And so we've been having a series of these touch bases. So excited about our time that we'll get to spend. So without further ado, we'll kick it over to the mayor to give some words and talk about our special guest today.
All right. Well, thanks, Marcus, as always, to you and the team at Win the Era for the great work that you're doing. And hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. I'm starting to really look forward to these. It's one of the best parts of my week, just having a chance to connect with so many people around the country who are continuing to find ways to work for our values, to work in favor of candidates and causes that we believe in, and to do it even with all of the continued profound changes and disruptions that are going on in our lives. As always, I hope that you're keeping safe and that those you love are doing well. I know a lot of us are working to sort through the different guidance that's coming through to different communities in different states. And as always, urge you to look for good information, even if reliable information isn't coming from the White House. Often local public health authorities and objective sources and mayors who, in my biased but I think accurate opinion, are often the best source of guidance and leadership, can be a great source of information at a time like this. We're doing well here at home. As you may have seen, Chasten's announced a forthcoming book, which we're very excited about. Truman and Buddy remain very glad to have our continued company. And I think it's safe to say we've fully settled in, starting to go through some things around the house that I didn't even realize were there. There's a T-Rex costume in the closet of our guest bedroom. No idea what it's doing there, but in case we ever need one, now I know where to find it. So maybe like you, I've reached that level of puttering around the house in between busy moments at a time that continues to have so many good things to do. That's included a lot of activity for the Biden campaign. You may have seen tomorrow we'll be doing a grassroots fundraiser, which is already looking like it'll be a really major opportunity in terms of the number of people who've responded to make sure that we've done our part as a community of supporters for Joe Biden to make sure he's the next president. Doing a lot of work here to continue connecting mayors up to each other and to those who are working on pandemic resilience. And one of my absolute favorite things to do every day is the work that we're doing with Win the Era to get great candidates elected around the country. And I'm so excited that today we're going to have a chance to introduce you once again to a couple of our candidates who I hope that you will get involved with and support them after they have a chance to share a little bit about what's motivating them to run and how you can help. So one of the things that you may have heard me say a lot when I was on the campaign trail is a conviction that there's no such thing as a permanently red state. I saw my own home state of Indiana go vote Democratic in 2008 for President Obama, and time after time really defy expectations, even if it remains a very conservative state. And from coast to coast, we've seen that when we work hard and invest and lead with our values, incredible things can happen. North Carolina is one of those states that I'm extraordinarily optimistic about and excited for because it's a purple state that's often voted a lot of conservative Republicans in, but also produced some remarkable Democratic and progressive leaders. And the dynamics in North Carolina right now, with demographic shifts and a lot of things happening politically and socially, creating new opportunities, are one of the reasons why 4 out of our 22 endorsed candidates that we announced and released last week are running for office in North Carolina. Two of them are with us today, and I'm really excited to introduce you to them. You may have heard about them, you may not have. If you haven't followed North Carolina closely, maybe you know that Roy Cooper, who we're supporting, is in a very exciting re-election battle there. You may know that Cal Cunningham is running for the United States Senate there, and we have a great chance to take that seat. But I'm excited today to introduce you to two more candidates and leaders who are doing extraordinary work. We've often, I think, as a party, certainly our side of the aisle, underestimated the importance of some of the state offices. And this is something that conservatives and Republicans put a lot of effort and, frankly, a lot of money and organization into, especially over the course of the last 10 or 15 years. We're not going to get caught asleep at the switch this time. And that's why I'm really excited for you to get to know Yvonne Holley and Sydney Batch a little bit better tonight after I have a chance to introduce each of them to you. They are in this race for the right reasons. They bring a mixture of compassion and competence that reflects our rules of the road that guided us during the Pete for America campaign, and that is so much in need in state government in North Carolina and leadership in the United States in general. And I think after you hear them share a little bit about why they are in their leadership roles and why they're seeking election or re-election, I think you'll agree, and I hope you'll decide to feel motivated to help in many ways too. So let me begin by introducing Yvonne Holley, somebody who, again, is going to continue to help us prove there's no such thing as a permanently red state. She is running for lieutenant governor in North Carolina. I've been delighted to get to know her in this process, and I'm going to invite her to share a little bit about her race and where she's coming from.
Well, thank you, Mayor Pete. I'm going to pull the Southern and I'm going to say, hey, y'all, and welcome to North Carolina. North Carolina is a purple state, and I'm sorry my dog is here, and he's going to have a few words to say from time to time. But North Carolina has been a purple state for a while. It's always been back and forth. It's a state that I used to say, we're the state of Jesse Helms, and then we will also have a very liberal senator. We'd have a conservative one where we voted our fears, but we also voted our ambitions and our desires. Now, I think that what's happening now is what we're back to is that we ended up being such a supermajority red state the past few elections, and I've been in the General Assembly now for 8 years under a supermajority. And it's because of that supermajority and their inability to really reach out to the average person and only deal with businesses and cut services to people in the communities that made me decide to run for lieutenant governor, to take this to another level. I have a platform called Ally, which is affordable living initiative, which covers housing, food security, everything that's really jobs, wages, transportation, everything that's really now going to be needed because our families are falling apart during this pandemic. People aren't working. We got to help do what we can to help shore up our family structures and make sure that they're safe and careful. As far as the pandemic is concerned, I wish you all hope all of you out there are safe. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you necessarily should do it. So if your state is one of those ones that has really opened up, be smart about it and think before you go out. We've seen a huge swing in the Democratic registration and turnout since 2016 here in North Carolina, all the way up and down the ballot. And because I won in a 6-way primary, and I won handedly in a 6-way primary with little money. I probably had the next to the last amount of money. And you ask, how did I do that? I did that because of grassroots and volunteers. I talked to people and I developed a statewide network. So much like what I'm here speaking to grassroots people tonight, which is why this is thrilling for me. To talk to people who are on the forefront. I told people to tell 10 people and have those 10 people tell other 10 people. I also said, talk about me to my face, talk about me behind my back. But when you go to the grocery store, talk about me. The beauty salon, talk about me. When you're on that golf course, talk about me. And that's how I got my campaign through and how I was able to win. We're at a point now where we can really turn North Carolina blue. And Donald Trump cannot win this election without North Carolina. So we're such a critical state. And I plan on being on the forefront of bringing out that vote so that we can win North Carolina again.
Thank you so much. And you're speaking to so many of the issues that I think affect people on a day-to-day basis that get talked about in presidential politics. You've highlighted affordable housing, and it was a question that came up again and again. And of course, we had a vision for what needed to happen federally there. But the reality is so many of those decisions play out at the state level.
Yes.
And it's one of the reasons why your leadership can make such a difference. And I love this political point that you've made, that there's no way that the Trump campaign can get reelected if they can't pull off North Carolina. They really need it, frankly, more than the other side does. And that means forcing them to have to try to defend that turf while getting wonderful leaders like you elected is something that strategically makes sense across other parts of the ticket, too. It's one of the reasons why we're so excited. Can you share a little bit just about what your experience as a member of the legislature, how that might shape what you would bring into this statewide office now?
Well, I'm a child of the 60s and amongst the first to integrate the schools. And it's like high school, where they have groupthink. When they're together, they're together. But when you talk to them one-on-one, you find out they aren't necessarily singing the same song as they do when they're in that groupthink. And I've learned that you look for common ground. What do you have in common? I was very successful in getting a food desert bill through because I kept the politics out of it and addressed the issues with people. And then when I took it as far as I can in the House, I gave it to a Republican female and let her take it further, because it's not about me. It's about getting that food to the people that needed to get that food. So I've learned how to work across the aisle. I've learned, don't vilify the person, just say that their ideology is not right, and it's my job to change their ideology through education and contact. That's how I've been able to do it. Now, there have been some difficult moments in the General Assembly since I've been in there. I mean, I remember one time when we were doing HB2, the bathroom bill, as we call it, I literally cried on the floor, because this broke my heart so much. And so, yes, I can get emotional, but I can also be a pistol. But I think that's what I bring to the table, is that diversity in attitude and that heart that it takes sometimes to push things forward.
That's exactly what we need more of. And I love the way you talked about getting the word out too. Now, team, this is where we've got to come in. So maybe we're not going out to the mall the way we used to and doing that kind of face-to-face spreading the word that we were just hearing about. But there are digital and virtual forms of that as well. So in addition to making sure that we're helping raise funds, we can help raise friends online just as we have in person. I love what you said about how to get things done on the floor, and it's a great introduction to another guest I'm really eager to share with everybody here, Sydney Batch, who won a remarkable race in one of those knife edge districts that helps determine the makeup of the House, somebody who brings a generational perspective, and I think that group thing that Yvonne Holley was just telling us about, I think Sydney Batch is another great example of somebody who's been able to cut through that and is reaching people in a different way and bringing that different perspective centered around families, children, and making our lives better. That is so needed in North Carolina state legislature across the country. So, Sydney, I'm going to bring you in and really looking forward to an opportunity for you to share a little bit about what motivated you to run, how you found it since you got elected, and what's at stake in your reelection and how we can all help.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate the support of obviously Win the Era and also your support, Mayor Pete. So thank you for that. For all of you out there, I am a family law attorney, a small business owner, a mom of 2 young boys who are 7 and 9. My 7-year-old has a birthday. It's all the talk in our household right now, tomorrow. And then I'm a practice family law and I'm a social worker. So I came to politics never thinking that I wanted to run, wasn't interested. Like many of you you know, women have to be asked on average 7 times to run. I was asked 2 other times, and on the 3rd time, I finally said yes. The first time, my kids were 1 and 3, and my response was, "My kids are 1 and 3." So that conversation ended. But quickly, I decided finally, after about practicing law and family law and child welfare law, I see people at the worst time in their lives, right? They come to me and they're dealing with the dissolution of their marriage, with custody issues, and they're trying to figure out how to navigate through the next chapter in their lives. And oftentimes what we found is that so many of them, hardworking individuals, were unable to meet their needs, right? Some of my clients were staying in houses they couldn't afford simply because they wanted their kids to go to the best schools. We had people who stayed together and were married for longer periods of time than they probably should have been because they had health insurance that was provided only through their spouse, right? So we have to rebuild their lives and try and structure it in a way that's going to be beneficial for them and their families moving forward. And so part of the decision was that I got sick and tired of seeing policies that would promote the general welfare and well-being of all North Carolinians continually be ignored, right? So paid family leave for all individuals, including part-time workers. That's something that we should be promoting. And now we see in the epidemic and the pandemic with regards to COVID, that had we had a robust paid leave system, we wouldn't have some of the issues that we see with regards to high unemployment rates and the lack of coverage. In North Carolina, since the GOP's been in charge, they have failed to expand Medicaid. So we have 500,000 North Carolinians prior to COVID and an estimated 660,000 post-COVID that are now being denied access to healthcare. These are working families that need to be able to, of course, get access to healthcare. And so I just grew very tired of the same old for individuals that just did not listen to the people who they were closest to. And a lot of people have said the people closest to the pain, should be closest to the power. And I think in that vein, you have to have some perspective. So I think being a small business owner, we provide 100% of the health insurance premiums for our employees. We think it's the right thing to do. We give them paid leave. Only 12% of North Carolinians have paid leave coverage, right? So you should do the right things, but not all small businesses have the ability and the profit margins, right? So we have to figure out policies that are going to help small businesses thrive, but also be able to, of course, recruit some of the best talent as well, because we can't always compete with a lot of the large corporations. We don't have those profit margins. So I decided to go ahead and step in the ring. The other thing that really drew me to running is that our government needs to look like the people it serves. And increasingly so, we have a General Assembly that does not look like North Carolina. So we have less than 25% of the people in the General Assembly are women. We have less than that of people of color. And then we have a huge age disparity. And the reason I think part of this, and Yvonne can speak to this as well, is that a lot of the members, the vast majority, are post-retirement. And that's because we pay $14,000 a year in salary, right? So you can't expect someone that's my age to go ahead in their 40s still raising kids and trying to deal with their career to go ahead and step forward and say you can get paid $14,000. I'm fortunate enough to have a law partner and a husband who is one of my other law partners who's very supportive and said, we want you to do this. But it's a huge loss for a lot of individuals. And so I feel like it's extremely important to step forward and have different voices at the table because you have different perspectives. I know that it costs $2,600 to have your children in preschool, in a really good preschool. But a lot of the members that I serve with, they don't have that perspective because their kids they have grandkids, right? So, and I'm one of 4 women in the House from 2018 that actually have school-age children. Out of 120 members, there are 4 of us that have school-age children. And you just bring a different perspective. And so I think it was really important for us to have a government that looks much more like our population. So I was happy that I ran in 2018. I won by 944 votes. I live in a very purple district, so it is razor thin. And unfortunately, because of gerrymandering in North Carolina, my district actually got harder with the new maps. There's been tons of litigation in North Carolina with the GOP messing with our maps. So it got 2 points more Republican, but I always tell my kids, if it's not hard, it's not worth it. So I'm apparently putting that to practice every day of my life in this political realm. But I'm, really happy to have served. I've worked on issues with regards to paid leave, Medicaid expansion, making sure people have access to affordable health care, et cetera. And so I really look forward to, of course, this 2020 election and the support of so many grassroots voters. We already have 100 people that are making calls every single month, or every week, for phone banking. We're hoping to get that up to 200 because in a time when we can't canvass, you got to figure out ways to, of course, have volunteers help. And we've been very fortunate to have the support of a lot of grassroots organizations. So thank you very much. I mean, my website's sydneybatch.com. It's just my name. But I really am thankful for everything that you guys are doing in order to help all of us.
Well, thanks so much, and just that simple fact of knowing the cost of childcare, not from a briefing, but from living it, the perspective you bring as a parent and a small business owner and attorney, but in particular the way you talk about, I think that everyday impact, right? What's happening in households and in families as a result of these policy decisions brings home what this is all about. I know we've got supporters here on the call who have questions, so I'm going to invite Marcus to come back in and moderate, and looking forward to hearing what's on the minds of some of our folks on the call.
Yeah, great. So I know folks are no stranger to how to type also the questions in here. So we have a question and answer box. If you have questions, please do feel free to type them in. But first, I believe we have Jessica O'Hara from Pennsylvania. Jessica, can you hear us?
Yes.
Great. Ask your question.
Well, okay. I'm happy to do so. Thanks, Marcus. Thank you, representatives. And hello, Pete.
Hi,
Last time we met, you were 12 years old.
Oh my goodness.
Your dad was my professor.
Oh, wow.
And he invited his class to your house for dinner.
So
wow,
I hope I behaved.
You were fine. So I adored your dad. And one reason I adore him is he helped me in my quest to attend graduate school at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill.
Wonderful.
And I spent the better part of a decade in that great state. And since then, I've watched in horror as the North Carolina GOP has done their worst, from egregious gerrymandering to stripping the Democratic governor-elect of powers to actual election fraud. These things have not only made national news, but also put a spotlight on their contempt for democracy. So I want to ask the representatives, and you kind of addressed this already, but I wanted to know to what extent that anti-democratic movement in that state has motivated voters to take ownership of their voting again and organize and turn out for candidates like you. I mean, to what extent is the antics of the GOP really driving the state back to blue?
Well, I'd like to answer that. First of all, when I first came in the General Assembly, they had won the supermajority. I mean, they didn't have to listen to us at all, and they let us know on a daily basis that they were going to do what they wanted to do. But since 2016, when Representative Batts came in, she was part of this Democratic wave that has come in, and we broke the supermajority, which then allowed the governor to be able to veto, because if you have the supermajority, he could not, they had veto override. So those are the kind of things that have happened in North Carolina, and we see it every day. People are voting their conscience now, not their fear, because they see fear every day on the news, and now they are having hopes and dreams of a better time when everybody is included. And Representative Batts is a fine example of one of the younger people who have come into the General Assembly and is making a major, major difference and impact in the state.
Thank you. And what I also would say about that as well is that there's a part of North Carolina, we are benefiting from people moving from the Midwest and up north, and we have a huge surge in population. We're one of the fastest growing states. And so I think that we benefit from the fact that people are coming from all parts of the country. But I also think that the GOP overplay their hand in a lot of ways. They have just been so contentious and mean-spirited at times. They just use a lot of tricks and manipulation in order to get things through. And so I believe that people, if I lose in a fair fight, then I lose. But it's when you use, all of the machinations that they've come up with to go ahead and try and win. That's where I think people are really hurt and offended and are no longer willing to, of course, continue to vote just because they happen to be Republicans, that they vote that way, right? I mean, it clearly has to change, and North Carolina's dynamic has to change. If I'm a Black woman, first Democrat in my district ever to win, and my district is 86% white, right? So there is a huge shift, and it's really positive, and that's what we're excited about, and that's why it's so important for Representative Holley to win, because on our Senate side, she would be the tiebreaker, the way that it works with regards to the lieutenant governor position, and we need as many votes as possible because we still are a purple state, and I think that's why it's really important for us to continue to talk to people about what matters to them.
Well put, and I think it's one of the things we need to be on the lookout for in races in North Carolina, across the country. To me, it feels like there are two opposite forces working on races around the country right now. From a political perspective, in a way, just demographic change and cold, hard reality and looking at the world around us is motivating more and more people to consider voting for candidates who share our values. But the mechanics of the elections are being manipulated in more and more, sometimes frankly, sinister ways, and something to really be on guard against, especially with all the different ways that the pandemic could compel us to open up ways to make voting available to everybody, but could also create a lot of openings for there to be both innocent and nefarious harm to our democratic process. Thank you. Thanks, Jessica, for the question, and so nice to be reminded of simpler days here in South Bend.
Great. Thank you so much, Jessica. So this is a question written in from Erin O'Neill in North Carolina. She says, I personally have many friends whose voices don't feel heard, but my generation are the people who are inheriting the country, and not only do they not know how our government works, but they do not care. How do you propose to energize the constituents who have given up hope in fixing this country?
Sydney, you want to go first on that one?
Sure. So I think the first part is to understand that people are really overwhelmed, and a lot of people, especially when they say, oh, you know what, they just don't care. Some people are just trying to keep a roof over their head, right? And food on the table, and making sure that their kids just get to school on time, right? And now, having been homeschooling my children for weeks at a time, I thank teachers, and they are amazing people. Already knew they were amazing. They deserve significant raises. But with that, I think what the problem and the challenge is that we have to meet people where they are, right? And we have to give them a reason to go ahead and vote. And so, especially with regards to younger voters, they hear only the negative on the news, and the media only pays attention to what is negative. And so one of the things that I did in my campaign in 2018 was that I just stuck to positive messages. I talked about what I was going to run for, what I'm about, what my policies are. And I stayed away from the temptation of just going after my opponent and talking to them. And I think people, one, they deserve our respect, and they deserve the ability for us to treat them like full-grown adults and give them our position so that they can make an informed decision rather than just bash each other. And so what we did in 2018 was we started working with a lot of the college students around. We got a lot of volunteer bases. And then we also just went to people's doors. I mean, we canvassed a ton. And when you meet people at their home, they were really shocked that a candidate actually came out to their house. And so if we can message better, and we can talk about policies that matter to them, like why paid family leave matters to them as a part-time employee who might get sick and needs to take time off but still has job protection, those are the things that I think people will finally come out and vote for. And I feel like we do a poor job at doing that, and we just need, as Democrats, to really talk about those table issues, those kitchen table issues that we have not done so in the years past.
Also, it's the intergenerational gap. And I have always had young people around me, because I find that sharing the knowledge that I have, and the bright and the enthusiasm of the young people, we all come up with better and better ideas. So being open to the generation, like she said, a lot of us are senior citizens compared to, because of the money that is brought in and the family. I waited until as soon as I retired was when I ran. And that was because of the money gap of $14,000 a year that no one can live off of. But I have always been very active in the community and surrounded myself with people like Sydney Batch, Representative Batch, and other young people with bright ideas to help master too. There are lessons from history I can teach them, and they can teach me how to use Zoom. And as I say, in the words of Aretha Franklin, who's Zooming who? That's before all of y'all's time.
That's great. All right. Well, we have time for one more question, and it is from Tom from Chicago, and it says, as someone that's out of state, how can they help volunteer? How can they help your campaigns, and where should they go to sign up and to do so?
Well, you can help the campaigns by doing just what you've been doing with the grassroots effort. Everybody knows someone in North Carolina or has a North Carolina connection. You can call them, you can talk about them, you can tell them what you know about us as candidates. You can make a donation to our campaign, www.yvonnelewisholley.com. You can look at my webpage, you can donate. You can make phone calls. You do not have to be in the state of North Carolina in order to support a candidate. You can do call time, you can do mail, you can't quite knock on doors, but you could knock on virtual doors by reaching out through this system of the computer and the digital age, and pass the word along as much as you can. And you can pray for us all. Keep us
I would echo everything that Representative Holley said. I'd also just add, yeah, I think that one of the things that we found is that people are bored enough to answer their phones of random numbers. I'm still not bored enough to do that, but lots of people are, based on the phone banking that we've been doing, and the way that we can go ahead and try and address, and when we can't knock on doors, we can't canvass, which is the #1 way to, of course, affect the most change and to connect with voters, is to do phone banking. So we've had a lot of success. So we actually have a phone bank that runs 3 times a week now. They made over, I think, 600 calls last week, and we have shifts. So we have 100 volunteers. We're hoping to get up to 200 volunteers who will volunteer a shift of their time to go ahead and do phone banking, so we can try and make sure that we call as many individuals as possible, knowing that we won't get the vast majority of individuals. We certainly will be able to, of course, have really great conversations with some of them. And so I think someone dropped in the link. It's sydneybatch.com/volunteer. And, you know, as Yvonne said, any of the ways in which you guys have continued to help us. The other thing that I would ask is, as a family law attorney, social media is the bane of my existence. It never helps any of my clients. They don't know how to emotionally regulate. They do terrible things that don't help me in court to support them. So I personally do not enjoy social media, but I know that it is necessary. So for those of you who love social media and have a fantastic presence and are on Twitter or you're on Facebook, if you can lift us up and you can retweet it and you can share the information that we share and you can follow us. I'm friends for Batch. I think that Representative Holley is by her name, Yvonne Holley. If you can follow us and if you can retweet and if you can put it on Facebook, then by all means, you're doing me a huge favor, because it's nothing that I enjoy and it's the bane of my existence, frankly. But I have to do it.
Great. Well, Mayor, I'll kick it over to you. I think that concludes our time for today, and we'll kick it to you to close out.
Great. Well, thanks again, everybody, for being part of this. Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Sydney, for joining us this evening. I don't know about you, but I feel, you know, when you feel cooped up and sometimes disempowered by being stuck at home, when there's so much doom and gloom in the news, and when I think sometimes our blood is boiling with the knowledge of what it is we're against. Nothing lifts me up more than being reminded of what we're for. And I think the two leaders, the two candidates that you saw tonight, it's a reminder of what we're for. Leadership that is compassionate and pragmatic, that is intelligent and rooted, that we need so much more of. And it just feels good to be involved in politics when we have candidates like this to support. So as you heard them say, there are very specific things you can do at YvonneLewisHolley.com, SydneyBatch.com. Sign up to volunteer. You can be anywhere and pick up the phone. And I think that will probably feel like a chance to get out and do something too. For a phone bank stint, you can contribute financially. You can bring our maybe more positive style to social media, which can definitely be a challenging place to swim around in. And you can spread the word. I mean, if everybody on this call just mention to a couple of people you know who you think might be excited or care, either because they live in North Carolina or just because they love good leadership, to say, you know, I just saw these two wonderful leaders, and then invite them to do the same. It's amazing the power that that's going to have, and that's exactly why we started with the era. So I'm so thrilled to be supporting these and other great leaders. I'm so thankful to be able to remain in touch with you. And as always, I hope that everybody stays safe, stays well, and stays involved.
Thank you again for this opportunity and for your support.
Yes, thank you for having us. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you.
Good night.